morning, everybody, and welcome to our session this morning, all about the Executive Management Programme that we hold annually with INSEAD. I'm Louise Cottrell. I am SVP of International Content Sales at AMC Networks, and I'm the co-chair of CTAM Europe. What we're going to do today is talk a little bit about our Executive Management Programme, and our partners at INSEAD are joining us here. It's going to take the style of an interview, and we're going to very much talk about the challenges we all face as industry professionals, but also as individuals within a very much a changing industry, very fast-paced change going on at the moment as well. It brings us lots of challenges as professionals. It brings us lots of challenges as leaders. Things are moving fast in terms of development of AI, ongoing consolidation, shifting revenue models, etc. So we want to bring you some information about our course and just to understand how can we best tool ourselves to really navigate all of these changes that are going on around us. So we have the tools to help you with that via our management program that we run every year. So I'm going to show you a short video on that, and then I'll be back to tell you a little bit more about what we're going to do. So if we could just show the video.
CTAM Europe Annual Executive Management Programme at INSEAD, a unique learning and development programme created for the media, connectivity and entertainment industry. Participants will benefit from an intensive week with top INSEAD professors focusing on business strategy, marketing and management principles within a curriculum built around detailed case studies. CTAM Europe and INSEAD, one of the world's leading business schools, have created a bespoke programme which enables media and tech executives to stay one step ahead of the changes and uncertainties confronting our industry. In addition to the learning, there are exciting networking and social events planned throughout the week. The classes, generally between 25 and 35 participants, are a diverse and multicultural range of global participants, all looking to empower themselves professionally and personally. The class size ensures that discussions and class involvement is extensive. New networks are made and nourished throughout the week and beyond. Register today for the industry-renowned CTAM Europe Executive Management Programme. World-class tuition by top INSEAD professors. Meet and network with international media industry executives. Competitive enrollment fees. Go to ctameurope.com to register. Become a master in your field.
So we will move on with this session, but what I would say, if you've got questions, we will ask or answer questions at the end. If you could click on the Q&A box to ask any questions, we'll make sure that we come to those. They're not visible to everybody, so feel free to ask away in there and we'll read them out at the end. So now I will introduce Lukas, who's my fellow co-chair, and we'll move forward with the session, and I'll see you later. Thank you.
And here I am. Good to welcome you all to this call, and thank you, Louise. Seeing that video makes me think back to the week that I was fortunate enough to spend at INSEAD, which was a fantastic experience. Not in the least part, thanks to our two fabulous guests for this call. Annette and Jörg, if I can ask you to join, please. Maybe I'll just hand over to Annette, so you can introduce yourself, Annette, for back to Jörg, and then we'll go on with the conversation.
Yeah, well, good morning, Lukas. Very happy to be here. My name is Annette Arris. I'm the co-director of this program. A bit of background: after a long career at McKinsey, early 2000, being a partner at McKinsey in charge of the media and telco sector in Germany, I decided to change tracks. And so half of my life I've been a professor at INSEAD now for the past 20 years. And my focus has always been the media and telco industry. Initially, it was called managing media companies, but as the media industry was the first one to go through the digital disruption, after a while it was called media and internet. And then as other industries followed suit, the course was broadened, and now it's called digital transformation of society, industries, and companies. And so I look very much on the impact of digital. On the other half of my life, I've been a supervisory or non-executive board member of a large number of listed companies across Europe, between Finland, Portugal, UK, Germany, Netherlands, and among them quite a few media companies and telco companies and cable companies, like, for example, Cable Germany, which was bought by Vodafone, ProSieben Sat.1, also the Middle Eastern Broadcast Company in Abu Dhabi. And so I try to combine both perspectives.
Super. Jörg.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lukas. Thanks, Louise. It's great to be here. Yeah, I'm co-directing this program with Annette. And besides this program, I'm also the program director of our leading digital and AI strategy program here at INSEAD and our B2B marketing strategy program. So here at INSEAD, I teach executives now for almost 15 years. Yeah, a long time. Really, 99% of my work is designing and delivering programs like this. And the CTAM program is always a special program. We will talk about this later a bit more. Before INSEAD, I also spent over a decade in management consulting like Annette, working for a company called Profit, founded by David Archer, the famous branding guru. So here I was running the insights and analytics practice globally. And that's where my passion for data comes in. Before that time, I did my PhD in marketing analytics. So as you can see, yeah, both of us actually bring also the business knowledge and not just the theoretical foundation.
That's fabulous. That's exactly what I think we need. So we've broken this conversation down in a couple of segments. And maybe to start with is the question, the why now, I guess. The media landscape obviously is changing dramatically, and not just the media, but also the connectivity space, the entertainment space. And we're coming back to France in March 26, because people will need to continue to work. Our colleagues in the industry will continue to work on the toolkit that they have. That needs to be updated. So maybe the first question I have is for Jörg. Looking at the curriculum, and then specifically the part around strategy management and digital transformation, how has the conversation inside the INSEAD classroom changed? What are leaders asking of you today that they weren't asking, say, 5 years ago when I was actually taking the course?
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting question, right? So I see this big shift from digital transformation to AI-driven reinvention, how I would call it. So leaders ask now, how do I redesign my business, my value change, my business model, my customer experiences by leveraging AI? But while of course, we will dive deeper into this, while it's a very important topic, and sometimes, I'm saying in the past, and by saying in the past, I sometimes even mean like 4 weeks ago, right? Because it's changing so quickly, right? I use lots of tools, etc. But I'm also not a big fan of all these buzzwords, right? Whether we call it digital transformation, data transformation, AI transformation. I mean, I think it's also very important here when in our program that we see technology and data as an enabler. Right? Because what hasn't really changed is, and that's very critical also in the program, how do leaders understand how to create value, how to co-create value, how to deliver value, and how to monetize value, right? And then the important point is how technology can actually help leaders at scale to enabling value creation. Right. So if I think about some of the frameworks we have been maybe discussing 3, 4 years ago, the frameworks still apply, but how we do it, how do we execute it, how do we use technology, that is really changing, right? And linked to this point, there's other big change that I see is how do we now also innovate and execute change at scale, right? So when we talk about transformation, when we talk about AI reinvention, it's also a lot about innovation. So that is a topic that we also heavily have to address.
So that there will be parts of the curriculum where we'll be confronted with these tools, with these changes, in a practical sense. And maybe that leads me into the next question. Looking at the alumni list and looking at the people that have already registered for the upcoming class in March, we have people from a broad range of companies. But these are all companies going through the transition, as you just illustrated. So they're all extremely busy. Taking 5 days out of that very, very busy schedule, big ask from that perspective. So stepping away and into your campus, into the INSEAD environment, which is sometimes described as a pressure cooker. How does the physical ambiance of INSEAD, of the campus, actually help to accelerate that learning process, that, you know, getting to the next phase of innovation? And maybe I can throw that to Jörg as well, and then we'll move over to Annette after.
Yeah, that's a great question, Lukas. I mean, first of all, Annette and I hope that the 5 days are actually, hopefully, then at the end save 100 days in their daily work, right? And I see this quite often, in particular now with AI, what you can do, how you can really help executives to make their days so much more efficient, saving 3-4 hours per day, having additional work time, if you will. Right. But I mean, back also to your question, I mean, for me, one important thing is really stepping out of this daily noise, right? These operational fires that leaders have to deal with every day, and that we create this atmosphere of where they can literally have the strategic thinking approach, right? Where they have a high energy, fast-paced learning environment, where, you know, I'm often saying, if you look at the participants in the room, sometimes we have 500, 600, 700 years of experience sitting in the room, right? And if you can combine that experience, this deep peer learning with powerful exercises, with simulations we use, with VR cases we embed, with the breakout exercises around their own problems. I mean, that's what you cannot do in an online environment, or let's say in some asynchronous video education, which we always do, right? So we really see in this program that all these things together at the end of the day really create a learning environment where people thrive and where people take lots of insights back to their jobs, right? And where we often say, and Annette will talk about this later, if they bring their problems to the program, how can they already start next week to do things differently, to be more effective, to be more efficient with their teams as well?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, having been there for the week, stepping away from the work and being physically with the people makes such a big change to your learning process. Annette, looking at the schedule, and maybe we can bring up the schedule for the upcoming week in March. One topic caught my eye, also back in the day when I read this, value creation in finance. So many of the participants are of a more creative or content background that are not, you know, necessarily drawn to complex financial structures and numbers and what have you. So how do you make that topic relevant and even exciting? Again, thinking back, for a creative director or a head of regulatory affairs.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say it, because in the course evaluation, the day on finance and the capital markets is always consistently rated as one of the most exciting days. But let me take one step back. So the idea of the course, so in the course, we have many people who are, you know, either very, very good operationally running a division, or are, you know, functional specialists in something. We have lots of engineers too. So the idea is really, it's aimed at people who are already very senior in their roles and want to make the next step, or to prepare for the next step, to have a more holistic and general view. And that's also what we try to do in this program. So the first day, which will be done by me, takes a step back. You know, we get news every day about the latest AI developments and other, but it's really to make people see the bigger picture. So what is going on? It's not only AI, but also other technology, and they all interact with each other. And it's not only the technology developments, but how are these developments fundamentally influencing industry structures, industry dynamics, ecosystems. So not only your own company, but the whole environment you're working in. What are the new rules of game? And then having understood that, in the afternoon, we deep dive a bit more. If this environment is changing this way, what does it mean both for the strategic choices you make as a company, but also for the way you run your company? So it's really setting the stage. And then the second day, and I'll dive into that in a sec, is really about, given all these things, how can I make decisions which really create value for the company? And then the third day, so that is very much more of a left brain side. And the third day is much more on the how. How, if I have to go through very, very significant changes, how do I actually lead those change? And how can I be a better leader in this new environment? And then the final days, and Jörg already talked about it, which will be done by Jörg, are really setting it up into the big picture, into very, very concrete, based on case examples. How then I actually create new strategies, new approaches, new ways of understanding what the customer really wants to get to better results. And the last afternoon, we'll get to that in the end too. It's not only about getting a lot of insights, it is a lot about translating what does this mean for me and my company. And so we have every morning a reflection on the day before, which is really around understanding what did I learn the day before, and how can I translate it to me as a person and to my company. And then you see there's some social events too, and they are really important because it's not only the formal teaching, but also the informal exchange, which is very, very important. And just a few words on the value creation and capital market day. So at the end of the day, it is all the decisions you want to take, you want them to create value for the company. And then the interesting question is actually, what is value? Is it just the share price? Or is it more than that? Is it really, and it's really related about what does the company see as its purpose? How does it want to create value in this world? And as a board member, I've been approving lots of M&As, acquisitions. I've been approving large investments in new businesses. And several of them have gone horribly wrong. And if you then take a step back, why is that? And it's, first of all, because you're not clear enough in the picture, what is it you want to achieve in the end? How are you creating value? And then, so it's about understanding the mission and how you translate that in a strategy, but also understanding the risks related to it. And then finally, how then do you translate that into numbers? And that is what Massimo will be doing. He will be talking about the different roles, who defines the mission, who the strategy, what kind of risks do you have to look at? Not only the risks if you do something, but also the risks if you don't do something. And how can you then translate that in an easy way into numbers, which not only reflect the future profit possibilities, but also the amount of risk you're taking. So it's really to give you a feel, how can I translate this general idea of value creation into some very, very concrete questions and numbers.
And I think the exceptional energy that Massimo Massa brings to the room in those hours or those 2 day parts is amazing, and it just makes you forget that you're essentially looking at some could potentially be dry stuff, but it's super fascinating. It's
very important frameworks, and we'll be talking a lot about beer, so that's good.
Exactly. Jörg, do you want to add a couple of more words on your 2 or your 3 day parts?
Yeah, and that's where I'm often saying, when I also chat with Massimo, where participants are surprised how marketing and finance are really close together, right? If you talk about what Annette said, value creation for the company, I mean, on the last 2 days, really what I said earlier, you can only do that if you create value for your customers, right? And that's where I will, if I dive deeper into this, talk about my latest book that I published about B2B digital transformation, the execution of it, where we identified these three transformational shifts, right? So how can executives literally leverage data, technology, and of course today AI to, number one, engage more effectively, right? As we know, it's a lot about engagement. I want to engage more effectively to sell more, right? Shift number two is, and that's of course where the media industry is sitting in today, like how do I build differentiating, value creating experiences, right? Or how can I move beyond the product, if you will, and how can I do this today again by leveraging tech, data, and AI? And then the last one, very important, I'm always saying if people want to use email or WhatsApp, do not optimize the fax machine, right? And that's what I see quite often. Too many companies are just optimizing the fax machine. Hey, I'm good at this. And they continue to do this, but they don't really realize that they have to move to the next winning business model. So that's really the shift number three, right? How do I not just build better experience? How do I really change the underlying business model? And today we see so many fantastic examples, which we also bring into the program, where companies really also, again, go beyond the product and create data-centric solutions that the customers are really interested in. And also here, I will actually use a VR case for this. I'm not embedding technology for the sake of embedding technology. I mean, the
VR
VR case here, the
is
virtual reality case,
virtual
exactly.
reality. Yeah.
The virtual reality case, because when it comes to this, we realize quite often that executives focus on a problem without understanding the root cause of the problem, right? And that's where the VR case really gets into, because again, I keep it a little bit like Albert Einstein, right? If I have 1 hour to solve a problem, I spend 55 minutes on understanding the problem. And I think that's very critical for executives, really taking that step back. Hey, is the problem what I'm trying to solve really worth solving? And does it create value for my customers so that at the end of the day, as Massimo would say, it finally creates value for the organization?
Yeah, that's great. Before we move on to the next topic, let me just remind everybody that you can ask questions, and I'm sure there are many, and I see some coming in already. You can ask questions by using the Q&A button at the bottom, and at the end of this session, Louise will take us through your questions, and hopefully we'll have some good answers. Well, not hopefully, I'm sure we'll have some good answers. So a little bit more about the S&Ds. If you have a look at again, both the alumni and people have registered for the upcoming course, it's an interesting mix. You've got, for instance, a VP of kids content sitting next to a director of data privacy, who's opposite a head of B2B sales. Annette, how would you facilitate cross-pollination between those different functions? I mean, we often hear CTAM Europe, the networking part is as valuable as the lectures. Maybe you could give us some examples, some moments that illustrate this.
Well, actually, Lukas, this is why the CTAM course is one of my favorite courses, because normally INSEAD has either open enrollment courses where you have people from many, many different industries and backgrounds, or company-specific programs where you really think. And what CTAM does, it's an ecosystem program. So we really have people from different parts of the media and communication ecosystem talking to each other. And we put a lot of effort in making sure this happens. So I very carefully construe the groups so they are as diverse as possible, both from functional background, from industry background, from nationality, to really learn from each other and solve problems together. And what I hear back a lot from people is that it's so good to talk to people from the other part of the ecosystem when you're not at the negotiating table, and to really understand. And at the end of the day, I think the shift the whole industry is going through is so fundamental that it is about reorganizing the ecosystem as a whole. Companies on their own cannot solve this. And if this industry wants to keep capturing the value, then it has to really think about where do we create the value and how can we strengthen each other, keeping at the same time the distance you need as supplier and customer and competition. But to really see how can we together strengthen this ecosystem, that the value creation and capture also stays in the ecosystem. So in that sense, I think it's a very important course.
No, and I must say I'm still in regular contact with a whole bunch of my former classmates. So it does absolutely work. Jörg, we do have a quite a diverse group if you look at it from geographic origination, from across Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, Northern Europe, the Netherlands, France, but also from the US. So do you take these regional differences into account when you compile the program, or is it really like a one-size-fits-all kind of approach?
No, absolutely. We take these differences into account, and we have to, right? And we always do at INSEAD. I mean, on the one hand, of course, we have to acknowledge that the strategic frameworks we teach are universal, right? So they apply. If you take whatever customer value creation framework, customer experience journey mapping, or digital business model proposition pivot, I mean, these frameworks apply to everyone. But of course, the application is highly contextual, right? And that's where, back to Annette's earlier point, that's why we have this big emphasis on the reflection exercises, the breakout sessions every day. I mean, people really need to think about it as an 8-hour, it's a very packed 8-hour day, but it's not that Annette and I do some PowerPoint karaoke, as I call it, right? It's really like we try to have this right balance between, hey, here you have the frameworks, but also keep in mind you can, I always say, you can massage the frameworks, right? That it works in your situation, and then it's about the individual and the work in the teams to really apply this to their situations, right? You know, instead of teaching best practices, which we do, but I'm also saying it's not just about best practices, it's about the best fit practices, right? So how do you make it fit to your situation? How can you get the puzzle pieces that you need in your situation, in your role, in your region, from the frameworks and from the discussions to really push your problems forward, or the solutions for your problems forward?
Yeah. Annette, did you want to add something to that?
What I think it's always very interesting. So, you know, certain regions are ahead of other regions in certain aspects. And so you see learning, you know, people from the US have certain experience and they're ahead, and then other things Europe has already done more. And so I think there's a lot of cross-learning, and also in the course we will not only be speaking about media and telco and communications industry. We'll take examples of other industries which are maybe already ahead a bit in certain aspects, and say, how can we apply them? So the idea is really to cross-learn and to open up, you know, the horizons a bit.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Again, before I go into the final section, let me remind everybody there is a possibility to ask questions. Please use the Q&A box below. As the final little block in this conversation is about money. Certainly in today's environment, a somewhat sensitive topic. We're asking delegates or attendees to pay 11,000 euros. And again, let me ask this to Annette. When a participant returns to the office the next day, the Monday after, say, what is the immediate change that their supervisor, manager, boss, shareholder will notice? Is it a strategic framework that's changed? Is there decision comfort that has grown? Can you give us some more insight into that?
Yeah, so I think there's a short-term and a mid-term effect. So in the short term, we really, you know, challenge people to say, okay, well, you come back on Monday morning, you see your team, and they say, oh, boss, you've been away on this nice trip for a whole week. What are your key insights? And to have a good insight into what can I tell my team? But then also, if you know, the high up management says, okay, well, invested all this money now in you, or, you know, you did it yourself. What is it you learned for my company? So that's in the short term. I think in the midterm, and now I put on my different hat as a supervisory or non-exec board member, when we think about, who is going to be the next leader in the executive team, we only partly look at how good was this person in running this division and getting great numbers, or in doing this function very well. That's only part. It's almost like the hygiene factor. What we're really looking for, from a board perspective, is this person able to think holistically? Is this person able to see the wood behind the trees and take the bigger picture, and to think strategically? And I think, and this course really helps you to make that step up, away from your specific area of expertise into the taking a more holistic role. And that you will probably not notice on Monday, that only later on, that you will reflect back to it and then suddenly understand why the board took certain decisions, which at first sight don't make sense to you, but if you put it in the bigger picture, you can see the logic behind it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I think as a final question, maybe to both of you. One of the things that's mentioned in the brochure is change management. Are you prepared? So I guess my final question is to each of you, and maybe Jörg, you can start. If you had one piece of advice for a leader that is still hesitating to register, which I can hardly imagine after your excellent answers so far, but what would that piece of advice be, Jörg? Maybe you first, and then throw it in that.
Yeah, if you're sure you are not optimizing the fax machine, right? Then no, but joke aside, I mean, I'm often saying it's better to walk in the right direction than running in the wrong direction, right? So do leaders, are they really aware of the change? I mean, we talk about change management that's happening around them, right? So I mean, transformation isn't really about speed, right? It's about clarity, it's about direction, it's about solving real pressing customer problems that create value for the organization, right? And back to this point I made earlier about understanding the root cause of the problem. Many leaders often think they know, but they don't, right? So that would be this one advice. I mean, transformation is a progression, right? It's a journey. It's ongoing. In particular today with AI, there are so many changes that are happening, which I, in particular in the last day, will address a lot. And if I go back to my research, maybe last comment here, when it comes to the barriers of transformation, I mean, number one is not really a big surprise, is cultural resistance, right? The mindset, the open mindset that you have to bring. And again, the senior people we attract here, it's not only about them, it's also how do they take all that knowledge and really bring it back into their organization, right? They cannot press a button and say,
Right.
I will change the culture in my organization tomorrow. That doesn't work, right? So it's really a stepwise approach, which we address here.
Great. And that's very briefly, there's...
Yeah, very true. Yeah, so, I think that we all perceive the current times as extremely volatile and hectic, and, there might be a complete new situation next day. And I think, especially in those times, it's really important to take the step back and see the bigger picture, and learn how to distinguish between, what is really important and what is just maybe, just distracting you. And the other thing I want to emphasize, the learning is only partly of what's happening in the classroom. It's as much, talking with the other people who are in the class and with the professors, and reflecting and taking the step back. And I do think, I always think about, human brains, that some very different connections will be made in your brain, in how you think. So I think it's a gift you give to yourself.
Connections in your brain, connections between people. Wonderful. I love it. So I will thank you for this conversation. Don't go anywhere, Jörg and Annette, because I'm going to hand you over to Louise, who's going to take us through the questions that we have received. Leaves me to say thank you all very much for attending this webinar. We still have a few seats available. I hope to see you in France. It's the only program which has been co-developed by the media connectivity and entertainment industry for the media connectivity and entertainment industry. Very valuable. You can join the ranks of alumni like companies from Liberty Global, where I usually came from, AMC, Paramount. It's a broad range. Comcast, not to forget. So hopefully I'll see you in France. I'll hand over to Louise and I'll say goodbye for now.
Thank you, Lukas.
Thank you, Lukas. A few questions that have come through, a couple around the course and the structure of the course, and then a couple perhaps more operational. So I'll start with the course one. So beyond the theory, and actually I know you talked a little bit about cross-learning, just sort of to expand on that a little bit, what is the structure of a typical case study, would be one of the questions, and what sort of companies are reflected in those case studies? Are they all media? No, we talked to that a little bit, but what kind of case studies are there around any media companies we might reference, or non-media companies? What's the feeling on the case study side of things?
Maybe for the cases, I hand over to Jörg because he is the absolute case study master. Jörg, you want to take this one?
Yeah, no, I can talk about it, right? So I think the important part is, as Annette said, I love writing cases, and I only write cases where I really have direct access to top executives, right? Getting knowledge, getting into their brains, literally, and get information that you cannot find on an LLM or on Google. And I think the cases are really a fantastic tool here for the executives to immerse themselves, to be the protagonist of the case. And it's really more like experiential learning, right? And that's why we still rely on these cases, because we realize and there is not much preparation needed, right? But it's really like people immerse themselves, and we use these to literally teach the frameworks and tools that we would like to use. Because at the end of the day, once you dive really into it with the decision problems senior executives were facing in the cases, it's also easier, back to my earlier point, for the leaders in the room to really apply now the frameworks discussed in these cases to their own situation. It's way different than if you would just talk about a potential framework. And that's really why we do this. Yeah.
And they're not all media company case studies. What kind, are you able to talk a little bit about which industries the case studies are from?
Yeah. So now, it's one of the cases I use a lot now. Of course, they're always carefully selected to the topics we want to select, we want to bring across, right? So one is about the Lemonade insurance company that I'm still planning to use because I think it's a fantastic case. People in the US here on the call will most likely remember the company. It's a fantastic case about a company, how they leveraged AI in their business models for better customer experience, literally for the 3 shifts I was talking about before. As we know, not everything is working well, right? And that's not a problem in a case discussion, because we can learn from the mistakes and we can learn from the good things. But it's, for example, a fantastic case, back to Annette's earlier point, of a company, an industry that is ahead of the media industry when it comes to the application of AI. There's so many great use cases, right? There's maybe one other case to quickly touch on this that I use for enabling AI and digital strategy. Now it's a completely different region. We are in the Gulf region, right? We're talking about Majid Al Futtaim. It's another award-winning case where I had the pleasure to work with the CEO, Alam Bijani, at that time, very closely on this. And this case is really about how, as an organization, do I enable AI-driven strategy by really embedding a data-driven culture into an organization, right? And I think, again, you cannot teach this by just using a textbook, right? So you have to dive into it. You have to have the people, and it's all supported by videos with the protagonists that really bring it to life for the cases we are leveraging. Yeah.
Talking of AI, something that's come up in the Q&A is, given the rapid evolution of AI, how much of the curriculum is dedicated to AI, would you say?
Yeah, I think AI will pop up everywhere because it affects basically everything you do. And of course, there will be a bit of a deep dive of, where does it actually stand? What is hype? What is reality? How are companies, I'll be looking into to what extent companies are really adopting it. How are they adopting it for productivity, for new business models? And I'm sure, Jörg will pick up on this one too. So, but then of course also, what is the AI impact if you do change management? How does AI impact value creation? So it will be nowadays you can't teach without really taking into account how it is affecting basically everything we touch.
Yeah. No, and maybe just adding, I mean, most likely all colleagues will talk about it. I know Annette does, I know even Derek, right, or Massimo. But of course, in my session in particular, and even if you just take the last 3-4 weeks, right, if you look into the new model Claude just launched or Gemini's new model, right? So I use also these tools in the classroom, right, where I let people literally build in their use cases, right? So last week I was in Dubai running a 2-day AI strategy program. It was just amazing to see. I mean, people literally created entire applications. They created entire, in that case, for a bank, entire engagement strategies, including video content in like 30 minutes, right? I mean, and that's also what we want to touch on. We know these are senior executives, and you need to talk the big picture, but you also want to get their hands on these tools, right? And really back to the value creation discussion for the participants in the room. I mean, how they realize in a half day how much they can do with these tools today. It's just fascinating to see. Yeah.
But also what the limitations are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. There are some things you can change, and there are some things you can't necessarily change, but can input to, but they're not necessarily the things you think you can or can't change. I did the course as well, and honestly, it was incredible. I did come back with all sorts of ideas of things that I could contribute to and a different mindset. So really fantastic. I'd love to do it again. It's really an exciting course. But with regards perhaps some of the more operational elements of the course, one of the things that comes up, and again, you did reference that there isn't so much you have to prepare, but to get the best of the course, what's the sort of, is there mandatory reading or prep, or what kind of follow-up might be required before, during, or after the course? What's your feeling on how to get the best from the course?
There is reading. It will be uploaded, in time into the course portal. And we do expect you to have read it because it will make the class discussion much richer. But it's really doable. It's you're not being overwhelmed. There are a couple of articles or cases maybe for each day, and then you will have enough time to pre-read it. Having said that, there's some people who start reading at 10 at night after dinner, but I wouldn't recommend that.
And then from that one. Other thing was the expected size of the class in general, and does the group split into smaller teams during the week? What's the structure of the class?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Every day we mix it up, right? We want to have people talking to all the peers, so we change the group settings. There's again group work every day in smaller groups, 4 or 5 people. But then also sometimes, and Annette does it also in the last half day, we know there are sometimes also confidentiality topics that are being discussed, right? So you have to be careful how you set up the groups. So we think about this as well. But in general, we say a good maximum number is around 35, right? So that allows us to have really rich discussions. And back to Annette's earlier point, we can really leverage the diversity we have in the room, right? From the regions where they come from the backgrounds they have. And then by mixing it up every day in these smaller groups, that's where the real learning starts, right? I mean, people learn not only from us, they learn a lot from each other. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'll answer the final question, which was about the workload we've kind of talked to, but I just wanted to stress as well, there's plenty of time for networking, both in class and out of class. There are evening activities, such as a wine tasting. There was bowls last time around. There's different activities that go on, and people go off in their own groups with people that they've met, or they might stay at home to do some more reading or catch up on the thoughts of the day. So to those who are worried about the workload, it's you prep for it. There's lots of work that goes on during the week, but it's all very organic and natural, and it is also very sociable, and plenty of networking opportunities, or a quiet night reflecting as you may need.
There will be a certificate, there will be no grades, just to
Yes, no grades. Okay, that's important, just a certificate. But I think that's most of the questions. So really, thank you so much, Jörg and Annette. It was really very informative. Thank you, Lukas, as well, and to the board, who I think are on the call too, and of course to Karen for organising, and for everyone for attending. So we hope to see you at INSEAD next year. Just as a reminder, it's 15th to the 20th of March. If you want any more information or registration or whatever, please contact us, and we will also be sending this conversation around, so you can have another watch or forward it to colleagues, etc. But really, thank you very, very much again, and we hope to see you at INSEAD next year. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very, very much. Goodbye.
Very much looking forward to it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.